Whenever a sales organization starts working in our program, there are things that come up for everyone. So in this next video series, we're going to discuss some of the big shifts that were made in their organization with the leadership, some of the ways that the leaders grew, and the biggest takeaways they had from the program. How do you think the presence of the two of you being in that program, being on time, being engaging, how do you think that that influenced your leaders' participation?
Yeah, I think just leading by example is one of the easiest ways you can lead, and leading by example and showing them that we're taking it seriously. I think that helped out immensely, and it held us more accountable too. We had to actually look like we had our stuff together each week. We couldn't wing things because we wanted them to take it seriously, and we didn't want them winging things. We wanted them to spend the time and do the work and do the homework between each session too.
That was a key part of the program because it allowed us to be exposed to the same things that they were, and and the fact that like they all knew it was important enough that we were there, then it was important for them.
What did the program make you think about as you were going through the program with the leaders? Like, did anything shift internally for you guys, or like a shift as a company? What were some of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say one of the big shifts, from like I'd say mine and Scott's perspective is that we needed to trust our people to, accomplish what needed to be accomplished.
I think for me personally, I went from being like reactionary, like, hey, things just coming in and me solving them as they go, to being more intentional and thinking ahead and planning ahead, and being prepared for our team meetings and being prepared for our one-on-one things, and thinking just into the future farther than what I'm doing today.
We became a lot more specific, in terms of, what we're looking at in terms of our metrics and, what we're trying to accomplish in this quarter and next quarter, and, really, getting more in the details on a lot of those things.
Going back to the reactiveness, like that's really something in sales, it's palpable, it's this reactiveness and moving out of that reactive to taking time to think ahead. It's really a mindset shift. And how did that shift for you?
So I think for them, I think they were kind of in the same position we were, because basically that's how we not train them how to do that. So there was a lot of reactionary, a lot of like, okay, I'll just check in with this rep and see how they're doing today, and just be there for them. I think they started to realize as we started to implement these one-on-one calls and re-implement it and make sure it was being done and holding them accountable to these one-on-one calls. I think everyone kind of realized how quickly like they had more time in their day, because their reps knew that they had dedicated time at the end of the week to be with their manager, and they would store up some of those things that weren't important, and they would have conversations about that during their one-on-ones.
If you kind of go through the different modules or just the topics, what would you say were the biggest things that really helped you guys get clear and set some systems? I know you've forced some action that you hadn't taken before, but what were there a couple of big ideas in all of it?
We already talked about the time one. That was probably the biggest one. Yeah. Was the time one. And then like the data part, like I love numbers, and to get everybody else bought into that, and we train on it even now, again, the same things, but the numbers are really big, because if you have your numbers down, then it's plug and play everywhere else.
Knowing your numbers, like, from a company standpoint, it's important, but then also knowing your numbers from a sales rep is important. And I think, before this, our sales guys, like, oh, I'm doing fine. Like, they really didn't have an idea of what their numbers look like. So when you know your numbers, then you're creating more of a business mindset from those sales reps, where, they're understanding their own business, within ours by knowing those numbers. So I think that was very important, to kind of create that next level of like ownership, for those guys.
And I'd say the last one, the one that probably made one of our bigger impacts is just like how we onboard people. So we talked about that, and we've put a lot of time and effort and energy into that. And now we have reps that come through training and just compliment us like, hey, I've never been through an interview process like that. I've never been through a training like that before. And now it's one of our, I feel like it's one of our core competencies as a company. I remember you talking to us about knowing your why on that goal setting and everything, and that was big. Now it's something we ask every single person that comes through, and it's very meaningful, and you get to see as people are coming through training who they really are and why they're driven the way they're driven.
We kind of revamp different things each year. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, here's our sales training. Like, we don't have to do much to it. We just did it 3 months ago. It's like, well, no, we did it 3 months ago. Now we got to update the things that, aren't necessarily relevant, that we have changed during the process, just during that short time frame.
When leaders start learning metrics, they go, I don't want to micromanage people. I don't want to hold people accountable. It's going to be micromanagement. But when you get into the metrics and you actually figure out where your business comes from and where salespeople should be spending their time, it's huge. And I know that was a big aha moment when you guys had initially gone through the program, right? So you looked at the whole cycle of how you used to call on coaches and where you found, you don't have to give all your secrets away, but you had found that there is a maximum, you have a higher closing percentage if you do it one way versus the old way you had been doing it. And so you shifted completely, not completely, but you definitely veered left on. And then what happened to your production?
Yeah, it shot up like crazy. Like, we were doing not less work, but we were spending less time in the field and getting better results. And it wasn't that was just one story, but like, as we've gone and paid attention to our metrics and what we're doing and everything, we found other reps that were doing things differently, and that worked really well. And then we tried it out with the 2 or 3 more reps, and that worked really well. And then we implemented it throughout the whole company, and it's changed our last 2 years significantly. Just changing the way we fundraise, doing something just a little bit different from what we've done it in the past. But we've let all the data speak for itself, and now it's easy for us to come to our reps and say, hey, we're making a change. Here's why we're making a change. It's because we're going to average an extra $1,064 per sale by doing it this way.
What would you say we talked about the culture, but what would you say the learning culture was like?
I think that's changed a lot. I think before this, everyone would just kind of look to Todd and I and say, okay, what are we supposed to do? And now it's a lot different. Like, we have people sending out like little video clips in our group chat saying, hey, did you check this out? Like, here's a good one that applies to us, that sort of stuff. So you can tell people are continuing their education on their own, because that's encouraged. It's something that we talked about in this training.
Yeah, it's just, tags on to like them buying into the, having their own ownership in it, right? I think having ownership in something, makes you want to be better and get better at it. We've created a good culture where everyone's trying to help each other get better, because they know, the stronger the person next to them is, the stronger it makes us as a whole.
So in some initial feedback you had sent after the program, you had said that people know what's expected of them now. And that's something that we do go through of setting up expectations for leaders with the salespeople that they're working with, but then also expectations of leaders, and which makes accountability much easier. But did you see any big shifts with that, or just some clarity that helped relationships? Or it helped with alignment?
Yeah, we were having the conversation right away, and that was super helpful. Just having them understand what's expected of them, and then if they're not meeting those expectations, that's a really easy conversation for us as leaders.
Difficult when you don't set it up in the beginning, though.
Correct, because it catches them by surprise, and now you have to navigate through that versus, no, we already talked about this. Now this is something I'm holding you accountable for, because I told you my expectations already.
If the relationship's there and the expectations is there, you know, at the end of the day, they're for the good of the individual.
Navigate through that versus, now we already talked about this. Now this is something I'm holding you accountable for because I told you my expectations already.
You know, if the relationship's there and the expectations is there, you know, at the end of the day, they're for the good of the individual.